set, hit.
Welcome to Out of Bounds, presented by Isaac's Roofing and Sheet Metal.
Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm Maria Montgomery along with Dan Reefer and Alex Walker. All right, guys, we have a big week ahead of us. The Cats meet Michigan State at Madison Square Garden Tuesday, then return to Rupp against EKU Friday, followed by the football Cats welcoming Tennessee to Kroger Field.
Yeah, we'll get to football in a few minutes, including my one-on-one interview with UK assistant coach Vince Marrow about Lynn Bowden. Also, we mentioned last week that there was some buzz about Florida State coming after Mark Stoops should they fire Willie Taggart. Well, that happened today. More on that later.
Yes, well, first, the big question hanging the UK basketball season opener against top-ranked Michigan State. Will Nick Richards play?
Still day to day. We'll see if he can give us a little bit of practice time today, probably nothing live, and see what he can do tomorrow. And if he's, if he's timid with it, he shouldn't play, not in this game. So we'll just have to see.
Well, having Nick Richards would certainly help UK avoid the kind of outcome it had in last season's opener against Duke. Yeah,
at least this time around, the Cats have some guys back who experienced that and want to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, you'd like to think that'll make a difference, but Calipari says you just don't really know.
You don't know what's going to come out in this game. I mean, you don't. I mean, I knew we'd have a tough time with Duke last year. I didn't know it would be 50, but I thought it would be tough. So you just don't know. I didn't know when we beat Duke that we were nearly good enough to beat Duke, which we did, or Kansas when we beat them like we did. I mean, you don't know walking into these games because they're so early.
All right, well, now let's get into this team. They'll face Michigan State and what we saw from them in the exhibition against Kentucky State Friday.
Yeah, that tips off our top plays, which are presented by Kentucky Greenleaf. Back on Kentucky's Media Day, John Calipari referred to Khalil Whitney as a natural scorer, but against Georgetown College in the exhibition opener, not only did Whitney not score, the 6'9" freshman did not grab a rebound either. Different story Friday night against Kentucky State.
Whitney was active. He wound up hitting 7 of his 13 shots, scoring 15 points to go with 5 rebounds, 3 block shots, and he even dished out 3 assists. He definitely looked more like the player that Kentucky coaches were expecting to see.
All right, for more on Whitney, we go to the post-game comments sponsored by the Bob Allen Motor Mall.
He was involved in the game, much more tonight. And I think that's what Cal has really got after him, to be a guy that's involved on the ball, off the ball, rebounding, deflections. He's such a live body, and he should be a guy that's a tremendous two-way player, and then he makes shots.
One of the returning Wildcats who's been receiving high praise from the coaching staff for weeks now is Emmanuel Quickly, and the sophomore guard has shown why in both of UK's exhibition games.
Quickly's combined stats over these 2 exhibition games: 10 of 16 shooting, including 5 of 9 from 3, 31 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists.
Quickly has said he just has a more aggressive mentality, that he's playing with more confidence in the results, or a more efficient player.
Quickly's backcourt teammates have also played well in the preseason, Ashton Hagans and Tyrese Maxey.
Against Kentucky State Friday, those 2 combined for 14 points, 10 rebounds, 14 assists to 3 turnovers, 6 steals. Their defense helped force the Thoroughbreds into 22 turnovers, leading to 30 points for the Cats.
A bunch of stat stuffers. Now, if UK has issues with this play in the post Tuesday against Michigan State, that trio of Hagans, Maxey, and Quickly can help carry the Cats.
Well, from the backcourt to the front court, and the addition of graduate transfer Nate Sestina seems to be a bigger deal than I think anyone expected. His leadership and performance on the floor has been invaluable so far. Yeah,
you're not kidding. I really believe if the team were to take a vote right now on who's the most valuable player, early on to this point, though, Sestina would be the pick for the kind of teammate and player he has been.
We've heard about what he's been doing behind the scenes. What we've seen him do in these 2 exhibition games is hit 11 of 17 shots, score 24 points, and grab 18 rebounds.
Nate's energy, is infectious. With this group, you have a group of young people that don't really know what to do. And Nate is a guy that's a connector on the floor because he talks. He's a guy that is going to not only be in the right place himself, but he's going to make sure 1, 2, 3 other guys are in the right place every time down the floor. Now, what you hope is that you can find a group of guys that are connected. And if Nate's the guy that's driving that, if he's the straw that stirs the drink, you might say, hey, that's going to be a big thing for us, especially in November and December.
Coming up on Out of Bounds, we flip the focus to football. A one-on-one chat with Vince Marrow that's all about Lynn Bowden. You don't want to miss the Big Dog's insights on UK's Top Dog next. Welcome back to Out of Bounds. After the Kentucky football team lost its starting quarterback, then the backup quarterback, the coaches turned to receiver Lynn Bowden, and the outlook on the season quickly changed.
UK had lost 3 in a row before Bowden took over behind center. The Wildcats have now won 2 of 3 since and sit at 4-4, entering the final 4 games of the regular season.
Yeah, UK assistant coach Vince Marrow saw what Bowden could do at QB in high school. I mean, he recruited him. I had the chance this week to talk to Marrow about his relationship with Bowden and how the troubled youth from Youngstown has transformed into the face of the program.
Well, Vince, when you saw Lynn in high school doing this thing that he's doing now, did you ever foresee him having an opportunity to even do what he did in high school on this stage in the SEC?
Actually, I seen Lynn in Little League football. That's the first time I seen him. Because believe it or not, our families, like, we all know each other. And I remember they was talking about this kid because my brother was running like a Little League team called the Braves. And that was like Lynn's and them rival team. And my brother was telling me about this kid who was scoring like 5, 6 touchdowns a game. And I went and watched him one Saturday morning, got it while I was in town, went and watched him. And I was like, wow, I was very impressed. Then I forgot, what's up, buddy? I forgot all about him. And then start hearing about him again when he became a sophomore in high school. I was actually the first one. No, I offered him as a freshman. On the way to a state basketball game, his coach got in touch with him. They was on a bus, and I said, I told him I was going to offer him. Had no idea. Well, I had an idea what he was going to be, but I offered him as a freshman, and kind of like year, 2 years later, then got back in on him his junior year when he was already being who he was. And I am not surprised if you seen we played Penn State. James Franklin made a comment that they spent 3 years trying to recruit Lynn to come to Penn State. So people who knew him in that region knew what type of dynamic player he was.
He did an interview with Kyle Tucker of The Athletic where he opened up and he talked about the path he was headed down. And as late as his senior year into the spring, how did you get him to go down this path instead?
Well, first you got to give credit to God. I think Lynn turned he really started having a relationship with God. He really did. And then, with me and Mark being from Youngstown and even Frank Buchanan, who's our director of football ops, I think the people in Youngstown wanted him to be with some people who knew him. And my family and his family, I knew his mom and his aunts and all them. And it was just a thing where he was such a gifted kid, but he was a person that people kind of like used for his ability in high school. And I think he was a little frustrated with that. So when you heard about him talking about quitting football, it was more like, hey, I just want to be a regular guy and go get a job. He already had a son. And all I told him was, Lynn, sometimes God blesses you in different reasons, and this is your gift that can get you out of here. And just come with some guys that you're familiar with, and let us mold you as a man. And I think if you talk to his mother, she would be very, she would stand behind us and say that's what we did.
Even after he got here as a freshman, he even admits he was a little bit selfish. How has he grown?
Oh, dude, it was like having my own son or just having his little temper tantrums, because it was all about the football. Yeah. And we had to teach him. I think this was the best thing we did, whether it's Coach Grant, Stoops, all of us. Lynn was always the guy. Excuse me. And then knowing that he had to be behind Gary Johnson, who really took him under his wing, Lynn got to see, like, hey, now we still knew he can do the things, because the first game we put him in against Florida, he looked like the best player on the field his freshman year. But he learned patience, learned that, hey, everything gonna be given to you. You gotta have some patience, and you gotta learn to work on other things in your life to grow as a young man. And I think that his freshman year really, made a great change in his life to start making who the young man he is right now.
Yeah, and his toughness, too. You're talking he's averaging 21 carries a game through 3 games. That means he's getting hit at least 21 times a game. Does that toughness carry over to the team as well?
Yes. When you got your quarterback he took some shots this last game, but he's just one of them dudes. I seen him take shots last year. He gets up off of it, and I think even the defense gets pumped around that. And you know, it's just a thing where he's really galvanizing this whole team. And I think he's one of them kids that like to put programs on his back and try to will himself to say, okay, we're going to win this game.
For people not to get confused that it's not just Lynn's athletic ability, this kid's got a mental capacity that's a little different.
Listen, America, I want everybody to know. I even talked to the NFL people. Lynn Bowden is probably the smartest football player I ever been around. Eddie Grant, who has been around a lot of football. Mark Stoops been around a lot of football. His IQ is off the chart. It's very off the chart. You can't do what he do at quarterback, lining people up, play receiver, doing all that. He's a very smart guy. And that's what the NFL is very impressive with.
It really is remarkable how far Bowden has come from the path he was on to the one he's on now.
Yeah, his current path leads to the NFL. He'll have a decision to make about leaving a year early to enter the NFL draft.
Of course, quarterback is not his future in the NFL, but is his future? What is his future Saturday against Tennessee? It's going to be really cold, so we don't know how that's going to factor into it.
I think this is the toughest call of the year for Mark Stoops. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, the Vols have been stout against the run the last 4 games. They shut down the SEC's leading rusher, Khalil Hill of Miss State. They held South Carolina to 78 yards rushing and UAB yesterday to 63.
And you figure Tennessee defensive coordinator Derek Ansley, who was Stoops' secondary coach here, is going to prepare for Bowden. So if you throw Sawyer Smith out there, maybe that's the better strategy, given that Smith has had 6 weeks to heal up and get healthy.
Well, it's highly likely we won't know who starts at QB for Kentucky against Tennessee until game time, which is Saturday night at 7:30, and the forecast is for temps in the 30s, like you said, which also makes it tougher in the passing game.
Yeah, run the rock, run the rock.
That's right. All right, well, coming up next on Out of Bounds, we see what social media brought us this week. It's our Halloween edition of Twitter Fire next. Welcome back to Out of Bounds. Halloween delivered some social media highlights this week. It's time for Twitter Fire, and it's brought to you by C2G Environmental.
We start with Maria as Cruella DeVille from 101 Dalmatians. You pulled this off well, Maria.
Yeah, you know, that was a lot of fun. That's for a dress store here in town called Miss Priss. She always features real animals every single year. She goes all out. She does not play around. So that
You look Cruella right there. Very cruel looking.
I was featuring my mean side. I was thinking bad, you know, really mean things. So those dogs were crazy, though. I can't believe we got any with them still. They were adorable.
They're cute Dalmatians. Yeah. Now, how about former Wildcat Patrick Patterson showing up for the Clippers game on Halloween dressed as the Nutty Professor?
You know, Patterson's a big movie buff. Like, he rents out theaters and invites fans to join him for movies.
That is so cool. Well, he nailed this one, and it probably helps to be living in L.A. where it's easier to find a costume designer to help out. And now to South Carolina basketball coach Frank Martin. He dressed as Fred Flintstone.
Well, I can't think of a more perfect costume for Frank Martin than Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, with his temper and his outbursts, Frank Martin is quite literally Fred Flintstone.
All right, moving on to a Georgia offensive lineman who looks like he has just seen a ghost.
My goodness.
This is what happens when the body says go and the brain says stop.
It looks like he's been shot. Look at that.
I mean,
this would have been a different kind of meme, Maria, if Florida had won. But the Dogs prevailed to take hold of the SEC East race.
Oh, that's right.
Weird stuff.
And now for a wild finish between Dartmouth and Harvard.
Yeah,
Harvard, y'all.
I'm not smart enough to get into Harvard. It's fine.
Obviously.
Maria's not either.
No.
Harvard.
Yeah, we're not Ivy Leaguers here. Harvard's about to hand Dartmouth right here. Its first loss of the season. But there's one more play to go, and it's this Hail Mary for the win.
Well, the crazy thing about the game was it was on ESPN Plus, and the camera operator blew it. So ESPN couldn't even use their own video of it. We're not going to show it to you because we're camera guys ourselves out there in the field, and we know how it is. But, yeah, the dude lost the ball. They couldn't even show it.
Oh, man.
Rough times for the Ivy League schools.
All right, well, coming up next on Out of Bounds, it's our takeaways from the weekend. What does Florida State firing its football coach mean for Kentucky's football coach? We'll discuss it next. Welcome back to Out of Bounds. A big development today in college football down in Tallahassee. That leads off our takeaways from the weekend.
Florida State has fired head coach Willie Taggart following the Seminoles' loss to Miami yesterday. We talked on this show last week about how there was buzz already that the school was focusing on Mark Stoops as its next head coach.
The Tallahassee Democrat put out an article today identifying the top candidates for the job, and they list the top target as Bob Stoops. who's currently the GM and head coach of the XFL's Dallas Renegades.
But Mark Stoops is also listed among the top candidates for the job. Stoops already has a pretty sweet contract in Kentucky, but of course, Stoops came to UK from Florida State. He was the defensive coordinator there from 2010 to 12. Also, he was on the coaching staffs at Miami and South Florida previously, so a lot of ties to the Sunshine State.
And I'm sure Stoops will be asked about it tomorrow during his press conference to preview that Tennessee game. But we're probably not likely to get a definitive answer because you rarely do in situations like this.
Yes.
Now, speaking of Tennessee, the Volunteers dominated visiting UAB on Saturday.
Tennessee capitalized on 4 turnovers, held the Blazers to 63 yards rushing in a 30-7 win.
But yeah, the UT offense, though, wasn't that impressive. 16 of 27 passing for 181 yards and an interception. The Vols ran for 121 yards on 39 carries for an average of just 3 yards a carry.
And only 5 of 13 on third down against UAB. Encouraging numbers for that UK defense.
All right, that's right. So in 2 weeks, the Cats will be in Nashville to take on Vandy.
Last night, the Commodores played South Carolina tough, trailing 14-7 into the fourth quarter before the Gamecocks put them away 24-7.
But Vandy gave up 440 yards and was held to only 189 yards of offense. Interesting numbers there.
Good-looking contest for Kentucky coming up, I think.
Sure
yeah, it's going to
is.
be tough.
All right, well, stay with us. You don't want to miss our Coach's Corner next. We get the always entertaining thoughts of Mike Leach and his take on Halloween candy. As always, we wrap up Out of Bounds with an entertaining comment from a coach. And the star of this segment is usually Washington State's Mike Leach. Here's Leach on Halloween in our Coach's Corner, brought to you by West Shores Home.
Mobility. Make sure you have mobility with your costume. Make sure you can get around. Make sure it's warm enough so that you can get as much candy as possible. And then as soon as you get it, immediately hide it. Because your brothers and sisters will try to steal it, especially older ones. I was the oldest, I know. And then the other thing is you know, make sure the good stuff is out of the regular stuff, because if they find your stash, you don't want them to find the good stuff, like the full big Tootsie Roll, or like the candy bars, you know, the full candy bar, not those little bitty 2-inch ones. You know, that type of thing. So, oh, and then how about the dentist? We had a dentist, he'd give you a toothbrush. That's what you got, a toothbrush with, hey, by the way, here's my dentist's office, come there.
Like, what do you think is going to, when you hand out, let's say, a toothbrush,
Yeah.
or you hand out like an apple, or like a thing of pretzels, what do you think the
Not
kids are going to
good.
do with that?
Throw it in the trash.
Yes, that's
throw it in
what-
their yard.
That's
maybe.
where it's going.
I
Yeah.
can
a little bit.
I can still tell you the houses in my parents' neighborhood that had the full-size candy bars.
Right.
And you would go there first. They put them out on the table.
The true kings and queens of Halloween.
They don't
Full-size
play
candy
around.
bars.
Yeah, my kids told me that one of the houses gave them 3 full-size candy bars each.
They're going to be hyper.
Dang.
They
Better
already
get-
are.
better
yeah.
get ready.
One of the, I mean, there are 3 full bags of candy at the house.
I'm going to come visit.
I'm gonna have to
All
bring
right,
it to work.
I'm gonna go hang out
Sleep
there.
over at Dan's house tonight.
All right, see y'all next week.